This is the art history students from Bristol School of Art interviewing Ken Stradling on the 7th of February 2018 for the exhibition Forms of the Human Body. So Ken, obviously you've got quite an extensive collection here of items you've collected over a period of time, and so we're using a few of these ourselves for our exhibition, but we had a couple of questions we want to ask you about a couple of the pieces.
Yeah.
Mainly this one by Eric Wayman, which is the recliner nude in stoneware, a dark figure with a primitive look about it. There isn't a great deal that we can find out about it, so we thought we'd tap your knowledge.
Well, Eric Wayman was a student of John Maltby, the only student that John Maltby ever took.
Right.
And he did very much like Maltby figures. This is obviously inspired by Maltby and so forth.
Okay.
He used to live in Hot Wells. He split up from his wife and then moved to South Wales, and I think it was Cowbridge in South Wales. And I went over there once to see him, only once, just after he moved. And I think he was setting up a kiln there again, but it was a small holding there, and he was more interested in showing me the chickens rather than the
pieces,
the kiln and so forth. And after that, we only had one delivery from him, and to be quite candid, we sent it back because it was slightly pornographic. So that's all I can tell you about him. We've lost touch, and
yes,
and our records in the craft department, they must have destroyed them and thinking, well, we're not dealing with them again. So,
right, okay.
So that's
yes.
all I can say about him.
No, that's fine. But your relationship with him was a good one, and you were able to talk to him about his pieces and...
Oh yes. He was an interesting man, and he ran. Besides that, besides the individual pieces of ceramics, he ran something called Bristol in Clifton. I think it was just called Bristol Pottery. Really, he used to buy blanks and decorate them.
Lovely.
And not hand decorated, printed them and so forth, and sell them to one or two of the stores in London. That was a sort of a sideline with him. But he was a good potter, but I can't tell you more than that.
No, that's fine, thank you. So if we can move on to this next piece here, this is by Peter Wright.
Well, Peter Wright started off years ago at Monkton School near Bath.
Yes.
And his pottery was part of the school pottery and so forth. And then eventually, and that's where I met him first of all. I remember my wife and I going down there to see him at the school, and he wasn't there very long after we met, because he then moved into Bath and started his own pottery. But he was a very individual person, very quiet person, never promoted himself, never took any assistance and so forth, and it was always a one-man band.
Yes.
And he did some very interesting plates and dishes to begin with, but what he is well known for is his interlocking figures, and he produced a tremendous number of them,
yes.
Moulded of course, and we used to sell them quite well, and we've got several of them in the collection, but yes. I always felt that he deserved better recognition, because he was such an unassuming person, a very, very intelligent person, very well read, very interested in what goes on in the world, but as regards to ceramics, that was his thing and so forth.
Yes, we've noticed what you have in the collection, and like you said, you do have a lot in there.
Yeah, well, in actual fact, I used to go over there periodically, and very close, the pottery was very close to the assembly rooms, very near there.
Right.
And I used to say, "What have you got for me this time?" And he would say, his storeroom was down there, and the kiln was in the basement. And he would say, "Oh, I haven't got very much down there," and so forth. But he would eventually bring up, half a dozen pieces, if I was lucky. But when he died, he asked me to deal with. The son kept all the moulds, and what he's done with those I don't know. Big moulds for all these pieces, but he asked me to sell off what stock was left in the basement and so forth, which we did at the Guild.
Yes.
And we sold it at a 50-50 basis. So the Guild took 50% and his son took 50%. But when I went down to the basement, in spite of what he told me when I went over there were hundreds of pieces down there. We must have sold over 100 pieces, you know, from the basement.
That's amazing.
So he was just never promoting himself.
No. Okay, so moving on from those, thank you, Ken, that's lovely, that's great. We have a painted pebble by Irene Jones. I just wanted to know what you...
Irene Jones lives at Bude, I think, in Bude. What is that, Devon, is it? Yeah, or no,
Somerset, I think.
Somerset, yeah, Bude, yeah. A good painter. She has an association with one of the London galleries now. I don't know which one. I've lost touch with her, but I did. The shows that they have at the Templemead station, you know, for the what do they call them? The affordable arts.
Yes.
She shows there.
Does she? That's
and I made contact with her, but the work that she's doing for this gallery is very different from what we're doing now. But I always loved her pebbles, and in the collection at home I've got some very imaginative drawings and paintings by her. But you know, the pebbles I found charming.
They are, aren't they? Very unique.
A very nice person. Very nice person.
Good. So we have a small wooden automnal piece here by Peter Markey. I'm just wondering.
Yeah. Well, Peter Markey came from Falmouth originally. That's where I met him first of all, and he was doing this kind of thing and so forth. And then it was taken up. Oh, he opened a shop in Falmouth, the higher part of Falmouth, and he was selling retail there as well as selling wholesale to me. But then he was involved with another potter, with another sort of maker, not a potter, doing this kind of work. And I can't remember his name offhand, but he set up a shop in Covent Garden, and Peter Markey supplied him in Covent Garden, and it was a very well-known shop for this kind of thing. And I've just forgotten the name of the shop or the name of the person.
That's all right, don't worry. We just have obviously the automation who it's by, so it's
yeah.
But it's rather quaint, really, isn't it?
Oh, lovely! He did some very elaborate things. One of the best people of this time.
You know.
And I think he was intending to move back to the West Country because he was on the Welsh border, in North Wales, or Welsh-English border, but he never did move back, and I think he died fairly recently, but we lost touch with him. Right. But we have one or two things in the collection now.
It's quite cute, I do like that.
But where was this come from?
It's downstairs. It's been in the collection downstairs.
I know why I'm a bit hesitant about it. The fact that this came, besides my collection, there was Colin Beales, the architect that I was with for many years. We travelled around together and so forth. He built up a collection, and when he died, 2 years ago, or 2 to 3 years ago, part of his collection came to me. So this has come from
his collection.
Colin Beales. This is why I don't immediately recognise it.
No, it's okay.
Because he bought from Peter Markey at the same time as I was buying.
Right, okay. Okay, we've got quite a modern, small blue face here, which is by Mats Johansson. Jonsson, I think his surname is.
Modern Danish. I don't really know much about him though. Probably our crafts department might be able to give you a bit more information about them, because I bought this from our own craft department of the Guild.
Right, okay.
What did you like about it?
I just thought it was fun, you know. Besides buying things that I think are well designed, I quite like fun things occasionally. I've got at home quite a lot of sort of fun things which people have made for me, and a sort of, what's the word? I'm fishing for a word now, but at any rate.
There's an element of humour to that little piece there.
It's the humour that I like in that one, yeah.
Definitely. So we have here a glass form which has been made by Eric Hogland.
Okay, Eric Hogland. Well, this is quite interesting because we used to buy a lot of, this is for the Guild, we used to buy a lot of Scandinavian glass and so forth. Fine glasses, wine glasses and vases and table, but all very delicate and fine. And the firm we used to buy from was Bowman's in London, who were big importers of. There were two big importers in London of glass. One was Weedarts and one was Bowman's. This was Bowman's. And I remember going there one day with Colin Beals, the architect that I referred to, and going to see what they were offering to us. They had all this beautiful, fine Swedish and Danish glass, laid out and so forth. And it was all on trestle tables, and underneath a big trestle table, about a 6-foot trestle table, there was all brown glass like this. There must have been 30 to 40 people all stacked together. And the man said to me, "Ken, I don't know what to do with this." He said, "It's not the kind of stuff we sell. I don't know why in the hell they bothered to send it to us." And I could see that it was the new image coming out, the hand building and so forth, rather than the delicate mass-produced glass. So I bought the whole lot and eventually sold it. But even I had difficulty selling it to begin with because it was so different. But eventually I persuaded people to buy it, and Colin had quite a collection and so forth. But it was very different because just as people were in pottery, people were breaking away from the Leach tradition and hand building and so on, such as Dan Arbide, Gillian Lowndes, Ian Old and Robin Welsh. They all were at the Central School and they were hand building and this kind of thing. It was quite a few pieces in my collection. So in the way of the glass field, people were breaking away from the very refined, delicate glass and doing this kind of glass. And Eric Hogland, you'll find he's well known in the Scandinavian glass world. He was the first one that we came across doing this.
Like that. Do like that a lot. So we have another piece here. This is by Dan Arbide.
Well, Dan Arbide is one of the ones I was just referring to.
Yes.
He was one of the first. We've got some big pieces by him as well. Well, they're not on display at the moment. I think they're upstairs. But I was married to Betty Hagger, who was art mistress at Clifton High School, and she followed. And she didn't throw or anything in pottery, but when she was teaching art, she would have clay and show people how to use clay and model and so forth and mold. And so she was interested in, and she must have heard about the new people breaking away from the Leach tradition before I did. So she said, we must go and see them in London. And the first one we went to see was Dan Arbide, who was working in a person's, I can't remember his name now, but a well-to-do person who had allowed Dan to have part of his large garden to set up a small pottery and so forth. And this is my first introduction to him. And he remained friends for life. He only died comparatively recently. We had a retrospective of his work here in Bristol, and we continued to sell his work for the Guild all those years, but it wasn't continuously selling because he'd go off and do other things. He was Jewish, and he went to Israel to do one of the camp things there, and he was away for 3 or 4 years. Then you find he'd be away somewhere else for 2 years, and he also taught at a summer school in South Wales.
It's quite a busy man then, really.
Yeah, so he was a very interesting man, Oh, and finally, he set up a little pottery for himself in the south of France, And I was always intended to go over there, but I never made it for one reason or another, and then eventually he died a few years ago.
Right.
But he lived in Brighton, that's
Yes.
where he was working from.
Lovely. So we have a piece here as well by Eleanor Glover. We actually think this is extremely interesting.
Well, Eleanor Glover is my great admirer of Eleanor Glover, because I think she's one of the best craftsmen around at the moment. You know, she lives in Bristol, you know.
Yes, she's a local lady, isn't she?
And very imaginative, very poetic. There's always a story. It's almost on the thing itself. Sometimes when she shows something, she writes a story to go with it. But
yes.
You can interpret this in different ways, the book and so forth. But it's always so beautifully modelled, you know, so beautifully made.
It is, yes.
She's a fine craftswoman. She's a good poet. She's interested in so many things. She does puppets as well, and
yes, you've got quite a few of her things in your collection, haven't you?
I think I must have about 20 items of her things, and she had. Well, one of the things. Oh, we've still got it. Yes, the one saying "Smile" is one of her things.
Ah, yes.
Well, a few years ago, about 6 years ago, there was a touring exhibition which toured for 2 years of something like 15 different craftsmen, some working in pottery, some working in glass, and so forth. It was a touring exhibition, and her contribution to it was the name of the exhibition, which was called Smile.
Ah,
and
lovely.
So her thing was the smile, which as you went into the exhibition, the first thing you saw. So when the exhibition finished, nobody bought Smile. I bought Smile from her, and that's how I've got that there.
No, it's lovely. It's a lovely piece.
I
it
love
really
that,
is.
yes.
Okay, so moving on from Eleanor Glover, we have here Catherine Gray's vase, which is a grey vase with a face actually informed onto it. And we know she's a local lady. Obviously, she was one of the students up at Bristol School of Art.
That's right, yeah.
So yes, we just wanted to know.
Well, I don't know, in Liberties, with the new director of Liberties some years ago, I think he's left now, he came from America, he encouraged people, they did a couple of, or maybe more than that, of television programs about him and about his attitude to Liberties and so forth, the way he went about it, and once a year or twice a year he invited students or people making things to submit them to him. And she was one who put some work in, and they took it up for a bit, and this was one of the things that she made. And we've got one or two of her pieces all in, and it was really quite successful for a time, but you know, I don't know what she's doing now, so we've rather lost touch.
Yes.
I mean, at the Guild, you know, you run something for a certain time, and then you've got to change. You've got to give, you know, a different look, and so that I mean, Dan Arby was exceptional. That we always had his work, you know, when we could get it. I mean, and I suppose Johnny Leach at Wiltshire, we've always got that work because that's so typical of that kind of work. But the other people, you know, we might run one for 4 or 5 years, and then there'll be somebody else coming through. So what's she doing now? I don't know.
Okay. And our last piece is actually by Kate Baxter, which is The Ceramic Woman here. I wondered what you might know about that.
Who's that by?
Kate Baxter, if you can see, just on the bottom here. I wondered how that made its way to the collection, because again, that's a very individual piece. Obviously, this is of a lady, it looks like possibly a dairy lady, with a ceramist piece.
I'm just trying to think of this one. I do know, I should know. I think it is a husband and wife team at Leon Sea on the East Coast and so forth. He's a well-known potter. She's a less well-known potter. They have quite a good gallery there and so forth. And she does some very nice jugs with bird faces on and so forth. And I think she's done this one as well.
Yes.
But you know, she went through phases and did other things and so forth. But I'm pretty sure I can double check on that. But I'm pretty sure that's the one.
Initially, we thought it was Colton Baxter, but
No.
but no, Ricardo actually looked up some information on her.
I think what happened is this came from. Now, when I told you about Colin Beals's collection coming to me,
Yes.
also there was June Lancaster's collection which came to me.
Right.
June Lancaster was one of our directors,
Yes.
and we travelled around extensively, especially later on, visiting fairs and visiting all sorts of things and so forth. And I think this is why it's got that #1 red on as well as the green label on. I think it's come from her collection.
Right.
And there were about 50 things from her collection. Most of them are at home still.
Right.
And I'd forgotten that this ever works its way in here, but I just have to double check on that one.
No, that's fine. Well, thank you very much for this morning.
I don't know whether it's any good use to her, but
Extremely useful. Thank you so much for today. Much
Okay.
appreciated. You've given us an insight to each of the pieces
all right.
and their artists, and obviously.
Well, if
little
there's
bit.
anything else you want clarification, or you want me to check anything like that, let me know.
Will do.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Ken.
All
That's
right.
great.
Okay.
Thank you.